Welcome back to another episode of The Art of Volunteering. I'm your host, Stormy Bell. Today we're meeting with a friend of mine. She's actually a mutual friend. We had Jan Michener on a few episodes ago, and she introduced us. So I just want to give a shout out to Jan and welcome Patty Hillkirk. Welcome, Patty.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
That's awesome. Let's learn a little bit about Patty. Patty is the Gestalt psychotherapist with over 40 years of experience working with at-risk youth. Her work with HIV/AIDS impacted adults started in the mid-80s when her best friend shared the news that he was HIV positive. Patty was inspired to create Camp Dreamcatcher in 1996. It means you're 28 years old. The organization provides free therapeutic and educational programs to youth impacted by HIV and AIDS. With just one full-time and 3 part-time employees, Camp Dreamcatcher is a volunteer-based organization each year with over 200 counselors, healthcare professionals, personnel, and community members volunteer with the organization, and she oversees and trains all of those volunteers each year. So welcome again, and wow, you're doing a lot with only one full-time and 3 part-time? Small but mighty. That's incredible.
Yes, we are small but mighty. We really, focused on that mission and stayed very close to our original mission of creating a safe place for kids impacted by HIV and AIDS.
Well, let's go a little bit deeper on that. I know we shared in your bio that your friend was impacted by AIDS, and this is the what caused the passion to start in you. Can you just share a little bit more about that and what that looked like and how that has over the 28 years grown to where you are now?
Absolutely. I just actually spoke to him last night, so he's doing well. Yes, we met when we were 17 years old. I think he was 18, first day of college, and we connected immediately, became best friends. And then about 6 years later, 5 or 6 years later, he shared that he was HIV positive. So back then in Chester County, I was living in Westchester, there really wasn't a lot going on. There wasn't a lot known about the disease. So I first started volunteering at the Red Cross because I wanted to learn about it. And then I became trained as a Red Cross educator and did a lot of work in companies going in. During that time, people were so afraid of HIV and there were so many myths out there. So that was my work then. And then I helped to start a nonprofit organization serving adults in Chester County who were really dying of AIDS during that time. And as you mentioned, I'm a Gestalt psychotherapist, and I facilitated groups as a volunteer every week for 7 years with that group. So really meeting my friend inspired me, changed, my life journey.
Yeah, I can see that. So can you explain what a Gestalt psychotherapist is? I had not heard that term prior to you and I talking.
Sure. So I went to Penn State undergraduate and graduate school. And then a dear friend of mine said, you've got to meet this person. Her name is Mariah Fenton Gladys. And she started the Pennsylvania Gestalt Center. And during that time, I was the assistant director at the Crime Victim Center. So working with trauma survivors and sexual assault survivors. And Gestalt is a very emotional based therapy. So for me and my work, and I still feel this way, it helps people move along through the journey of trauma in the most efficient way. So a classic Gestalt model is to use an open chair. So if you're talking about your father or your mother in therapy or something that happened to you, you pull up a chair and say to the person, put them there, talk to them. So it gets you out of your head and really into your heart and into your feelings. And then the way that I was trained, it was a 3-year training, uses a lot of psychodrama, a lot of music. So it's very experiential. And I started a private practice in 1991. And then, of course, started camp in 1996.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit about your campers? I'm assuming this is a summer. Is it all summer? Is it 1 week in the summer? Is it a year-long program? I mean, camp can be a lot of different things.
Well, we started as a 1 week camp. So in 1995, I was watching something I do every Sunday night still. I was watching 60 Minutes. And there was a program on about a camp in New York for kids impacted by HIV and AIDS. And as I watched it, I was really touched by their stories. And of course, I was working with adults at that time, living and dying with HIV AIDS. And a friend of mine who's a Gestalt therapist, we were in training together. She called me and said, "You've got to do this." I mean, right after that, and I said, "What do I know? I mean, I don't know how to do this. I was a camper, but how do you start a camp?" So then I shared it with my friend Mariah, and a lot of people said, "You got to do this." So that summer of 95, I volunteered at a camp in New Jersey, which is still around, and it's purely a recreational camp. So there wasn't the component of being able to talk about your feelings or educate around HIV AIDS. So I came back really determined to create a safe place. And in January of 1996, we came together and created the 1 week of camp that following August. And I had a full private practice at the time. And I thought, well, I can do this. I can handle my practice in a camp. So we were serving 5 to 13-year-olds for the 1 week of camp. And at the end of the week, some of the boys came and talked to me and said, "What are you going to do next year? We're going to be 14." So I thought, okay, we'll expand the age. So then we expanded the age and it just kept expanding. So now we serve really 5 to 35, and soon it will be 5 to 40 years of age. And in 1999, we expanded to year-round programs. So what that means now is we have our signature program is our week of camp in August for about 120 to 130 kids, ages 5 through 17. And then we bring all those volunteers in. And then we also have a year-round mentoring program for 15 to 17-year-olds, because we know what we've learned is we're the most consistent adults in their lives. So they start when they're 5. Our volunteers, 70% have been coming over 15 years and many 20 to 28 years. So they meet the kids, and we just started seeing the need grow. And our philosophy is to listen to the youth. And when they say we need this, we create it. So we added a teen leadership retreat and a life skills weekend retreat. And now it's the year-round mentoring program. So our mentors, who are our counselors and health center personnel, pediatricians, social workers, are matched with mentees, the kids, and they work throughout the year on specific goals. It could be resume writing, it could be applying to college. Um, some of our kids are homeless, so finding housing. Some of them have food insecurity. So we've we expand to really look at all of the issues that are impacting them and how can we provide services throughout the year. And our program now, I mentioned to you earlier, the Holiday Adoptive Family Program serves families, the entire family. So if you have a infant, if you have somebody who's not yet 5 and can't come to camp yet, it serves the entire family. So their wish lists are matched with donors who then purchase gifts for the families. And then we also do a lot of HIV/AIDS education and training and restorative practices. So 10 of us are certified restorative practice trainers. We actually trained Jan Michener and her crew last May. And now Jan and I are doing some groups at the youth center here in Chester County with some of the boys. So restorative practices or restorative circles are used when there's a conflict. So we use them in all of our programs whether you're 5 years old or you're one of our volunteers in their 80s, we sit in a circle. Everybody has a chance to talk about what happened, how it impacted them. And then the final question is, how do we repair this harm? So it takes me or anyone away from coming in and saying, this happened and this is the consequence, to the group or the 2 people or whoever resolving it. And then it also for our kids who 100% of our kids have experienced trauma. And many of them, 50%, are living in households where there's addiction, where they're impacted by substance use disorder. 70% want mental health therapy, and only about 20% have access to it.
Mm.
So we recognize that. And so part of the mentoring program is to provide individual therapy sessions for the kids in between our intensive in-person stuff programming. And then once a month, we have Zoom sessions with the mentors and mentees. So they're working together on those goals. And about 97% of the kids want to go, further their education. So goals such as that. And then we also have a college scholarship program for
Nice.
kids in that group who, are interested in furthering their education.
So you have become a safety net for these families, these children, and to see them see success in their lives, and to, if I'm hearing you right, to help them work through the trauma to bring them to a place of normalcy, like where they're actually able to move forward with what they have at hand. Um, that's amazing. Um, how many lives, and you may not have this, how many lives do you feel that you've impacted over the 28 years?
Well, I can tell you that I write a lot of grant proposals, so I have those stats on hand. As of now, 6,300 youth have come through our programs.
So that's just youth. That doesn't even talk about the parents or guardians or the caregivers and their family members. So this just grows. So you've impacted probably 10,000 people when you look at all the relationships related to that student.
Yes, and then also I think the ripple effect is HIV education. One of the things at camp, I don't have a private practice anymore. And at camp, I still do the HIV education groups. So all of our kids every year, 5 through 17, have a group with me. And we talk about HIV and AIDS, and we start that. So every year of their lives, they have a space at camp and at our retreats where they can share something that is a secret. There's still such a stigma related to HIV and AIDS, and it's the safe place for them. And then when our counselors, who used to be campers, last year we had 26 counselors. So we had about 60 counselors, and 26 of those used to be campers. And many of them are working with their counselors from when they were 5 or 6, because our counselors stay forever. So it's a very interesting relationship, similar to the parent child. When your parent starts to grow and you see them as an adult, all those kind of growing issues we've had at camp. And so that ripple effect of education, as well as the power of volunteering. I mean, there's something about the camp experience, our programs, that goes beyond what we call the kids. We do it for the kids. We're there for them. And then there's also magic, because people come back because of the relationships they made with the co-counselors and our camp community. So it's a very special place that sometimes is kind of beyond words. You can't capture it. And recently, we started in 1996, and we always work with Indigenous people with all of our programming. And we've recently reconnected with the Lenape Nation of Pennsylvania, which is great. Yes. So we have a chief, her name is Blue Jay. She comes for the week of camp and, really talks to the kids about the land that we're on. We rent Camp Saginaw, which is, of course, Lenape land. So that component is really important to us, to educate the kids about that and our volunteers.
That's awesome. Can you, 28 years, I'm sure you have more than one, but do you have a story of impact somewhere where you've seen someone's life so transformed that it just it's your go-to, that one really touched my heart, or something along that lines?
Oh gosh, there's so many of them. So many. I mean, one kind of recent one, which was a couple weeks before camp, maybe the week before this year. I was in the office. I got a phone call, and there was a guy on the phone, and he said, "Is this Miss Patty?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Now I'm going to cry." And I'm like,
Oh,
"Okay." So he cried, and then he said, "You're not going to remember me." And I said, "I think I will." And so he told me his name, and then I started crying. So we're both crying,
yeah.
and I haven't seen him for probably 15 years at least. And so he just wanted to share the impact camp had on his life. And, he said, "I'm a father now, and I just want you to know what those years did for me, giving me the foundation and the relationships he had a rough life, and a lot of things went on as a young adult with him. Um, but he's got it together now." So that was really nice. Those moments where you get that phone call that you don't expect. And I also, during that same time, received an email from a camper who was here our first year in 1996 with a photo. And she said, "You know who this kid is?" And luckily, the first year in 96, we took Polaroids of each camper.
Right.
And so I found them. I was able to go back and find the kid. And so those deep connections of really what our campers call their second home. And, the place like no other. One camper said, "It's a dream I don't want to wake up from.
Oh,
It's the only place I feel loved." Another camper said, "My counselors pick up the broken pieces of me."
oh,
So there's, 50% have experienced a death in their family, have lost their mom or dad or both parents,
mhm.
and 30% have been diagnosed with a mental health condition. So, those stories just really resonate. Um, we also, the first year of camp, I tell the story in my TED talk with this camper's permission. She lived in Chester County as a teenager in her car with her mom for 2 years,
Mm.
and her mom died of AIDS. And no one in her high school asked her about it. No one said, they knew, right? They knew she was living in her car. They knew her mother died. No one said anything. So she moves through life. At age 15, she was the person who had to get permission for her mother to be taken off of life support. Again, no one mentioned anything in her school. So she went to Africa and started some nonprofits for moms and children impacted by HIV and AIDS. Then came back and was Teacher of the Year in Washington, D.C. She's a very she's just an amazing woman, just absolutely amazing. And she was with me one time at we had to go out and speak, and she was speaking about her story and what happened to her. And there was a man listening, and I thought he was mad the whole time. I'm kind of trying to read him because we're trying to get money from this group. And after we left, the person who was running the meeting called me, and I said to her, "I thought he was not getting us. I was getting a weird feeling." And she said, "After you left, he started crying because he was the principal in the school
Oh,
where this young woman was."
wow.
So what he was, was one of those full circle moments where she was a teenager just sharing her story. And those are the times where, the power of education,
Mhm.
because HIV is still has such a stigma around it. And until you meet someone or someone who either is infected themselves, someone in their family is, or someone's died of AIDS, you don't really get it.
Yes, yes. That's the case with many, many things. Unless you
Yes.
know someone personally, you're oblivious. It's
Yes.
it's like it doesn't exist. Wow. Thank you for sharing those stories.
Hmm.
All right, let's pivot just a little bit. Do you have a volunteer journey?
Yes, in my family, it's interesting. I've thought a lot about this. Volunteering was part of our culture. So I can remember as a very young child going with my parents when they volunteered. And, then in grade school going to singing at different places, nursing homes, that kind of thing. My parents were involved in volunteer organizations. So it was just a natural piece. When I was in college, I started volunteering. I was a den mother with Cub Scouts. And so I always just looked for that because, again, it was a natural part of my journey. So then when I moved to Chester County, I got involved different volunteer organizations. I've been a Kennett Square Lions Club member for over 20 years. And our service right now is around food drives. So we focus on different communities and put bags out on a Saturday, then come back the next Sunday and pick them up and take them over to Kennett Area Community Services, the food cupboard there. And I also, when my son was very young, I started volunteering as a basketball coach at the Y, the local Y, and did that for 5 years. And through that, made some relationships with some organizations and businesses who then volunteer at camp. So it's those connections. And, what I found in the Kennett Square community specifically is how invested and how much they embrace our mission. And the Longwood Rotary is a great example. They, for probably 20 years now, have taken our supplies to the camp session, to Camp Saginaw, because most of our kids come to camp with not very much. Sometimes they're barefoot. And so they collect stuff, then they bring it to camp. And a couple years ago, they got so frustrated with driving it that they built a shed at Camp Saginaw for us. So it houses all of our supplies, and they still come out and they move everything to where we want it at camp. So during the week, that 1 week of camp, we provide 150 therapeutic groups and about 56 to 60 educational programs, and then 150 recreational. So all of the kids we have 7 different programs with different ages, and they live in cabins, and then they travel to their recreational, therapeutic, or educational programs throughout the week. So it's like a little town almost. It's try to keep it organized. And it's amazing to see, especially the 5-year-olds many of them stayed overnight away from their families, make it through a week of camp where they're extremely busy.
I guess keeping them busy really helps that they're not thinking so much about that they're not in their own bed.
Absolutely. And then we have partnerships with so many other nonprofits and groups. We started a great new partnership with a group called the Philly Avengers, which are a professional superhero group. So they came out to camp last summer and at our opening ceremony walked in. So you had Captain America, you had, so many princess and different people walking in, and our kids just went crazy. And then they had photo ops with them, and that was really neat. And then when we had our Catching Dreams Over the Edge event, which is our largest fundraising event here in Kennett, we had 50 people. That's in September. We had 50 people rappel down the tallest building in Kennett. So I was one of them.
Wow.
And we also had Spider-Man and Captain America. We had the mayor of Kennett Square, the police chief, rappelling 8 stories down that building. And a lot of families heard about it, so they brought their children out. And so they got to meet their favorite superhero. So it's kind of, again, that embracing of our mission by the wider community has enabled us to raise this year almost $76,000 was raised through that event.
Nice. Well done. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's you've been doing this for 28 years.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share a time when something didn't go as planned? It doesn't mean it went wrong. It just didn't go as planned. And what did you learn from it? It's kind of like a blooper.
Well, for me, the biggest blooper was probably COVID. And our camp week is in August, and our board of directors and myself, we were in denial. So up until May, we thought we were still having an in-person camp. So other camps had pivoted. We had a teen retreat scheduled for June, I believe it was. And about a week before the teen retreat, which was in person, we shifted to virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we really didn't know a lot about Zoom. We didn't know what we were doing. So we held that teen retreat, which was okay, but it was pretty crazy. Just trying to figure out how to do all the IT stuff. And then we decided to shift to 2 weeks of virtual camp. So for 85 kids, for 2 weeks, we had camp, and we had about 7 different Zoom links because it was focused on ages. So like our 5 to 7 year olds had 2 hours of camp a day.
Okay.
And then we shifted to, up to the 17, 16, 17s, I think had 6 hours. So we managed really all of our programming. We had our therapeutic groups, we had yoga, we had karate, we had story time. I took photos of books, and then we had PowerPoints. Um, we didn't have massage. That was about the only one we didn't have. And then every night we managed to have our evening programs. So the second week, all of us came together. We had our dance, we had our talent show, and we had our wish log, which for us is the most important ceremony of the week. That's where anyone at camp finds a log, which could be an inch long or 10 feet long, and they tie or they paint wishes.
Oh.
And we meet in a field. So there's about 200 of us. We meet right after dinner, hold hands until everyone is very quiet. And then we walk over to the lake, and surrounding the circle at the lake are teepees that were made for us by Indigenous people, who then taught our campers what clan they were born under. And so then they gave them paint and said, okay, Bear Clan, go paint your teepee. So those are all surrounding us. And they're really important because they have handprints of children who've died. And so they are there. And in the middle, we have a fire, and there's a microphone, and you can come up and you can state your wish verbally, or you can put it on the fire in silence. And it's a really important ceremony. It's almost like, well, it's very much trauma related and grief related. Kids say to me, it's the only place I can share this. I hold on to this all year long until the wish log. So it's really important. And we were able to pull that off virtually. And a lot of the little children, the 5 and 6 year olds, whisper in my ear. They don't want to say their wish. So when we did it virtually, they put it in the chat. And that just kind of happened. I started seeing these, I wish my mom were still here. I wish my dad didn't die. I wish, my mom would stop drinking, or whatever the wish was. And that was really powerful. So it turned out positive, although I do have to say it was extremely stressful. The other piece for us was that we decided to deliver all of the camp supplies to each family. So we serve kids in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware. And that was quite something.
You're on the roads for weeks leading up to get all those out.
Yeah, we had a lot, and we partner with PayPal, and they do a carnival camp. And what they decided to do at virtual camp was to do different games with the kids. So they had scavenger hunts, and they sent boxes for each age group. So the kids got a bag, and it said, don't open until, whatever day it was they had the games. So that was amazing. And then they also did escape rooms with the older kids. So again, it just confirmed that there are so many people who want to volunteer and make a difference in the lives of kids in our community in so many different ways, whether it's supplies or food drives or coming out to camp or purchasing gifts for the holidays. The heart of giving is alive and well in the Kennet community.
Awesome. think they're known for their generosity. Yes. All right, Patty, we are coming to the end of our conversation, and it has been so enriching today. I'm going to give you the mic, and I want you to love on Dreamcatcher. Could be something that we didn't talk about. It can be your campers. It can be your volunteers. Just love on them.
Well, I will love on our volunteers right now to hear our volunteers make life decisions based on the week of camp is unbelievable to me. Whether it's getting a job, I've had people say, I'm not taking that job because they have to come to camp, or their marriage, or their, life choices. So many life choices around that touchstone is amazing to me. And also to see that moment at camp where the kids see their counselor. We know that what is the most significant thing with kids who are resilient, the research has shown, is to have a consistent relationship with an adult in their lives. And that happens at camp. And it's really because of the volunteers and their commitment to come out to camp each year and to give and give and give, especially the young volunteers who used to be campers. I mean, one of them this year, she's always had a personality that's been really strong and powerful, and she speaks her mind when she was 5 years old, and now she's in her mid-20s. And we, at our final circle at camp, she said to me, well, she said to everyone, I have something to say, and I don't usually say this. And we were all like, oh boy, what's she going to say? And she said, I am so happy to be here. And she wanted to really love on us in saying that she's watched our community change over the years. And not very many communities do that. So to listen to the younger kids and to change with their needs, as well as the young adults and to change with their needs. And it was interesting to hear that feedback, but it really spoke to our mission is sustained by young people becoming involved in the camp community. That's how we're going to be sustained, is by our volunteers. And, those are the ones who are going to take Camp Dreamcatcher forward by becoming leaders at camp and leaders in our organization, really. So, my big shout out would be to the volunteers. And it's all about them. We wouldn't be here without them.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. All right, Patty, thank you so much for your time today. I know my listeners have truly appreciated our conversation. To my listeners, I know that you again found value. I ask that you rate and review this episode wherever you are listening. It really does help other people hear about the impactful work volunteers are doing to help restore the fabric of our society. So thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye.